Married at First Sight, season 14, episode 9, and this is the after party, y'all. And the after party had Jasmina, Lindsay, and Noi. And let me tell you, it was so good. This after party, let me tell you, it's almost as good as the show, and it is so much better than last year. No shade to Jamie Otis, but let me tell you something. Keisha Knight Pulliam, she is bringing it. She is asking all the questions. She's calling people on their bullshit and everything else. I love her as the host. They might need to upgrade her to be an expert because she's actually giving out better advice than some of these experts. So at this point, it's 3 weeks in, and Keisha Knight asked all the ladies, how are you feeling about now? Noi says she's feeling so good. She's feeling happy. She's so thankful about how the experts paired her up with Steve. She's so happy with the choice. Jasmina starts talking about she and Michael are still trying to learn what communication works for them. And Keisha Knight Pulliam gave her a little side eye like, okay, girl, we're going to get into it. But she's basically said, what type of communication you talking about? She was like, communicate, but don't talk to me. Communicate with me, but don't talk to me that way. Keisha Knight Pulliam called her on her bullshit, and Jasmina sat there with her eyes all big like, what the hell? The drink of the day was a date night daiquiri, and then before they could even toast, Jasmina was already turning up the glass and drinking before they could have the cheers and the toast. And Keisha Knight was like, wait a minute, Jasmina. And Jasmina was like, oh yeah, I forgot. I said that same thing to Michael on our wedding day. Exactly. Just like I said in my video about Jasmina, a hypocrite. She always want to call other people on their stuff, but then she turns around and does the same thing. So she pulled that glass back and she waited for the cheers. So they played back a scene with Lindsay and Mark when they're talking, and then they come and start talking to Lindsay and like, what was you thinking? And so here goes Lindsay with all the negative shit to say about Mark. Well, I'm dealing with two different Marks. The one behind the cameras and the one that we see on camera. Well, you know what? That's the same thing people said about you, Lindsay. They start talking about how all you do is play up for the cameras. That's actually what people said about you. She starts talking about that Mark really has an inflated view of himself. He doesn't see himself as who he is. Well, guess what, Lindsay? That's the same thing we say about you. I don't see all this stuff that Lindsay's talking about with Mark. But you know what? She loves putting him down. She loves calling him names. And she's on one tonight. She starts talking about that Mark says he knows how to speak Italian. But then but the fact that was the matter was that he only took Italian in high school. And she's like, well, then you shouldn't say you know how to speak Italian. Why are you even bringing that up, Lindsay? She's out to sully his name. She has figured out that she ain't the favorite one. And now what she's decided is she's going to sully Mark's name. So now she starts bringing up the fact that, on his LinkedIn account, he talks about he speaks Italian and he don't even speak Italian. Why are you bringing that up, Lindsay? Why are you trying to bring up dirt? Girl, you a mess. They showed the scene when Mark was sitting across from her from dinner and told her all those sweet things about he appreciated the things that she's done for him, how she was a good person and all these other kind of things. So Lindsay starts crying. They give her a tissue and she's like, oh, this is the first time I ever heard all this. This is the first time that he ever validated me, because nobody wants to confirm bullshit, Lindsay. See, Lindsay wants credit and affirmation for bullshit. Well, Keisha Knight jumped in. She says, okay, well, you talking about all the things that Mark doesn't do for you. Well, what sacrifices have you done for him? You talk about how, Mark wouldn't have the sushi for you. He doesn't even like sushi. That was him coming outside of his comfort zone. So what have you done for him, Lindsay? That's what Keisha Knight Pulliam asked. This girl said, oh, I put on a hazmat suit. Then they asked Noi, what kind of sweet things has Steve done for you? And Noi says, well, he always puts the toilet seat down and she appreciates that. And Keisha and I was like, oh, that's good, because that's a battle in my own household. Then they asked Jasmina, what kind of sweet things that has Michael done for you? And Jasmina said, well, you know what? Michael now watches TV. If you remember from the very beginning of the wedding, Michael told Jasmina he doesn't even watch TV. So now she says, oh, well, he actually watches TV with me. And, he watches the series with me. And now what he does is he tells me to wait. Don't get ahead of the series and wait for me. And you know what Jasmina says? No, I'm not waiting. See, Jasmina, you want him to do something, but when he starts doing it with you now, you don't even want to meet him halfway. Girl, she's such a hypocrite. They start talking about the scavenger hunt that Noi and Steve went on. And it was really interesting because, what we saw took 2 minutes. And Noi said she thought the scavenger hunt for Steve was only going to take about half hour. She said it took Steve 2 hours to go through that scavenger hunt. So he was doing that for 2 hours. And she was saying she really appreciated his stick-to-itness and his determination. And that was also at the time when, Steve finally told Noi that that he loved her. They showed that scene too. And they're like, well, did you celebrate after he told you he loved her? And she's like, oh yeah, we celebrated. You know what they did. Then they started asking what kind of random acts of kindness did have the men done for the women. It's nice they're trying to focus on the positive, because some of this stuff is just getting so negative. And Noi said, you know, she loves the boba tea, you know, and she was saying that Steve often brings her that home after she's worked all day, which is sweet. You know, Jasmina said that, you know, when Michael comes home at night, he'll run and get her some hot Cheetos, because I guess that's one of her favorites. But Lindsay said, you know, after the cameras are gone and they're tired, she goes, Mark the shark just goes and eats goldfish, and she goes and gets in the bed. So they're not even having no communication. They're not even really getting to know each other off camera. All their stuff is just on camera. Noi says the complete opposite. After the cameras leave, she says she and Steve sit in the bed and talk for 3 hours, and they're really getting to know each other. That, you know, and it's showing up on camera, because when Noi and Steve get together, you can tell that they've done a lot of work off camera, and it's showing up. So if they're having 3-hour conversations every single night, they're talking a lot. They're getting to know each other a lot. So then they start watching the episode of Jasmina and Michael at the park, and Keisha Knight Pulliam says another little sly comment. She goes, oh yeah, this is when you guys get together and you almost got through a conversation without disagreeing. Call them out, Keisha. Call it out. Let her know that we all see it. So they showed that clip of Jasmina basically laying into Michael when he was trying to say, I'm trying to learn how to communicate with you, and all you telling me to do is talk to me, and it's not helpful. And then Jasmina is up there laughing in the seat, but she wasn't laughing much longer, because after that clip rolled and Keisha and I Pulliam looked at her and said, you know what, I'm about to give you the business. I gave Michael the business when he was here last week, and he tried to say that you cut him off on the boat, and I told him that he was wrong, and I'm about to tell you wrong. And Jasmina's face got all solemn, and her eyes got big as if she had never heard this before. And even the other girls, Lindsay and Noi, had this look of horror and shock on their face that of what they saw on TV, how Jasmina was talking to Michael, and Jasmina acted like she had never heard these words before. And this is part of the problem with Jasmina, because I feel like nobody has really ever told Jasmina the truth. And it was really neat, because, you know, what Keisha Knight Pulliam did was, instead of her being the lecturer and telling them everything, she threw it back to Noi and said, you know, how have you and Steve handled communication problems? Because everyone wants to assume they don't have any. But Noi says, oh yeah, we've had big problems with communication. She said, but one of the things that I've learned is that, you know, when you don't know someone, it's easy to assume the worst about them, because you don't have all the answers. You don't have a level of trust with them. But what you have to do to yourself is you have to say, even though this person is still a stranger, I'm going to think the best of them. And that was very good advice. So then they showed the scene when Michael had told Jasmina about his brother dying, and how he was crying. It was really a vulnerable moment. And, you know, basically Jasmina didn't cry in that moment, but we know she cried off camera actually in the episode. And even on this after party, she was all tears, and she was really crying, and she was saying how much it hurt her, and how much, you know, if she would have had a brother or a mother or sister that died, how much she would have hurt. Well, you know, this type of vulnerability you're showing now, Jasmina, this is what you should have shown Michael at the time. But then she started saying the reason I didn't want to cry on Michael because I wanted to be strong. You know what? That's not what Michael's asking from you. He doesn't need your strength. He doesn't need you to be some strong woman. He actually needs you to be tenderhearted. He actually needs you to show some level of empathy and concern. And tears in that moment would have been appropriate, because then he would have known that you really did feel his pain. But instead, you're always the ice princess. That's not very vulnerable, Jasmina. Then they start showing all the Katina stuff without Olajuwon, and it looked bad. Of course, everybody thought it looked bad. And then Jasmina pointed out that, hey, you know what? I know everybody sees this clip with Katina, and she's just sitting there listening, and people might think that she's weak and everything like that. So Jasmina starts to say she has a lot of conversations off camera with Katina, and she knows that Katina isn't weak, and that everyone shouldn't think that about her. And I don't think everybody thought that about Katina. I don't think that about Katina. I just think that Katina is the type of person where she doesn't fly off at the handle, and she actually thinks before she talks. And so then Jasmina also said, you know, that Katina has been through a lot, and she's been through a lot of things worse than this, and that she basically can handle it. And then Lindsay jumps in and basically says, oh, well, just because she's been through a lot worse than this doesn't mean she deserves this from Olajuwon. Well, first of all, you know, we got enough smoke for Olajuwon, but Jasmina never said that she deserved it, Lindsay. So that's what I'm talking about, Lindsay. She always talks about how Mark the Shark wants to be on camera, and Mark the Shark wants to, you know, inflate himself. But this is what Lindsay does. She chimes in moments where she doesn't need to chime in. And in fact, her little thing that she added here, she shouldn't even have said that, because that's actually not what Jasmina said. Jasmina wasn't trying to say that Katina deserved the treatment of Olajuwon. She was just trying to say, don't believe that Katina's not going to have something to say to Olajuwon and that she's just going to be a shrinking violet. But it's so funny because when this exchange was going through, there was a little part of, you looked over at Noi, and Noi was like disgusted at Lindsay. Noi don't like Lindsay either. I don't think Lindsay has any friends. No one likes Lindsay because Noi's look to Lindsay was like, shut the hell up. She was disgusted by what Lindsay was saying. Then Lindsay, like, Katina is a beautiful woman. She doesn't deserve the treatment. Well, no one said she deserved this. Anyway, I'm so done with Lindsay. I just don't like her little comments she makes. They're so disingenuous. In case you're not start asking what keeps you in the marriage. And this is the first compliment I've ever heard Jasmina give Michael. Jasmina says, well, you know what? Michael is a good man. So, you know, this is interesting because, you know, all this is filmed after decision day. And so now all of a sudden you have Jasmina saying Michael's a good man. Well, you sure didn't say that in the last 3 weeks. I have never heard Jasmina give Michael a compliment. So she starts saying Michael is a good man and that when things are going well, it's going good and they laugh a lot together. And she was saying that this marriage is something worth fighting. So then they asked Lindsay, what's keeping you in the marriage? And of course, and then she brings up, of course, it's got to be negative. And so she brings up that what keeps me in the marriage is I never want to leave somebody when they're down. So what she's trying to say, Mark is down. She starts telling everybody that Mark has always been the side dude. That he proposed to a woman that had another boyfriend. I tell you, she's just out here to sully a Mark's name, put him down, make him look like a fool. She said that Mark has never been in no relationship more than 2 months, and for the last 10 years he's been the side dude. Basically, he's just like leftovers. She's just really trying to devalue this man. It is so sad to watch. And then they asked Noi what's keeping you in your marriage, and she basically said Steve is wonderful. She's everything that she's wanting a husband. Anyway, that's it, y'all. The after party was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. So I hope you enjoyed this review of it. Talk to you later. Bye.